Welcome to the Dog Liaison Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna. On this podcast, we are taking on the dog training industry and deconstructing what it means to train a dog. In fact, I believe only you are the expert in understanding and caring for your dog, not some magical dog whisperer. And with a lot of context and some coaching, you can realize your expertise in supporting your dog. And so without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello, friends, and welcome to today's episode. We are talking all about training separation anxiety and separation-related problems. So this is going to be a good episode for you if you know that your dog has been diagnosed with clinical separation anxiety by a veterinary behaviorist, and it'll also be beneficial for you if your dog is experiencing other separation-related problems. So your dog follows you from room to room. Your dog doesn't like it when there's a barrier between the two of you, and there's that frustration there. Perhaps your dog is experiencing some boredom. We'll talk about that. We're going to be talking about what to do when your dog just has hyperattachment to one person and the dog is fine if other people are leaving, but when that one person leaves, it's like horrible. We're going to be talking about these other separation related problems. I first think it's really important that we define what we're talking about today. You go to any other trainer, you're going to get a lot of different responses on what separation anxiety is. I think that's the first thing you need to know if your dog is experiencing separation anxiety is that you can talk to 10 different separation anxiety specialists and you will get 10 different definitions of what separation anxiety and separation related problems look like in a dog. So the reason I give that clarification is because I'm going to define what I consider separation anxiety, and we're going to describe some of these other separation related problems that you might see. Okay. I also want to talk about how they are similar, how treating these different separation related problems really are similar in most ways. In most ways of treatment, the separation related problems are effectively the same, which is you extend out the duration and the time alone for that dog, the time away from the dog, right? In theory, and kind of in practice, it's the same. However, the experience of the guardian is different. Depending on what your dog is facing, your experience as a guardian is going to be different from someone else who's facing a different separation related problem. So the first thing we need to realize is that there isn't really a scientific definition of separation anxiety. There is not a scientific definition, objective definition of separation anxiety. In 2020, it was the beginning of 2020. I want to say it was like February, March. There came out a paper from London that was the first framework of diagnoses of separation related problems. Okay, it was the very, very first in 2020 of all of the years that we've known dogs have separation anxiety. We didn't get our first framework of diagnoses until freaking 2020 beginning. Okay. And even in that paper, they did not describe any of the diagnoses as separation anxiety. They did not use that label for any of the 4 diagnoses that they created. Interestingly, how they separated the separation related problems, how they separated the diagnoses was actually based on more of how the dog's behavior was displayed, what the dog was doing, than the context of alone. It had less to do with the circumstances and more to do with what behavior was observed. And that is why even today you can go to 10 different separation anxiety specialists and get 10 different answers on what separation anxiety is and what it looks like and how it operates. What is also true is we do not know definitively, like for fact, scientifically, where separation anxiety comes from. We have really, really, really strong hypotheses that by and large, the scientific community support, but it's still not fact. We have a very strong hypothesis that there is a genetic marker for dogs that experience panic when separated in different contexts. separated from their human, separated within a wall, separated, left alone entirely. They just can't handle being alone, right? There is a serious, sorry, I know I digressed, but we do not have scientific fact on what separation anxiety is and exactly where it's caused. But we do have a pretty reasonable hunch that is built on what we know about dogs in general and how they build relationships with our humans. We know that they can establish relationships with humans at the same level of, for lack of a better word, intensity or ability. It releases the same amount of oxytocin, the same amount of serotonin. We know that they can foster these relationships with humans that goes beyond what other, for lack of a better word, wild animals are capable of. We also know from an ethological viewpoint that we have designed dogs through artificial selection to be dependent on us, to need us for shelter, to need us for water, to need us for food, to rely on us for resources for existing. We understand from an ethological, just fundamental level, we have made these dogs codependent on us. And so therefore it makes sense that they would start to build a hyper-attachment and reliancy on us. We also know that we have designed breeds literally for the sole purpose of keeping our legs warm. There are breeds of dogs that at their very, very, very fundamental level, circa 13,000, they were just, 1300, their job was literally just to lay on top of legs and keep legs warm. And their job was to follow their human around and be a lap dog. Exactly. So it's no freaking wonder why a Cavalier King Charles would have separation anxiety. Like, no one is sitting around wondering, how does this happen? It's really not that big of a mystery, even though it's technically not a fact. Even still, we also see that life experience can influence how attached or reliant, or for lack of a better phrase, needy a dog is on their human. Yes? We know that life experience can really, this is one of the reasons why we see so many dogs that were adopted or were born during the COVID period where everyone was staying home. They got accustomed, and even my dog did this, even though before COVID, I was leaving frequently just fine when Max was fine. When COVID happened, I was home a lot more. And when I started changing that routine, Max was like, I think you're supposed to be with me, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that anything's wrong. I think what we have to come around to as a consensus of dog guardians, we need to start normalizing a dog feeling like they want to be around their human. A dog wanting to be around their person is not wrong or weird or unusual. What's unusual, quite frankly, are the dogs that are like, see you when I see you. Like, I'm perfectly self-sufficient. I can feed myself. I can find water by myself. I can relieve myself. You are not in my world whatsoever. What's abnormal is in a domesticated, US first world country where those dogs that are, for lack of a better word, pets, are completely unattached to their people. That is actually, in my opinion, a cause for alarm, because I'm like, what are those people doing? Because that dog should have some sort of like relationship with that person if they're living together. Why do they feel like they're living two existing lives, right? That's number two. Let's talk about the different types of what you might hear as separation related problems. Now, to be clear, when I give these labels, these are not the labels that the diagnoses framework that came out of London in 2020 gave. I have an entire video on my YouTube channel which breaks down that paper and talks about those labels. So the labels that I'm about to use did not come from that framework. They are labels that you might hear a veterinary behaviorist or a practicing behavior consultant use. Okay? We have isolation distress. We have barrier frustration. We have hyperattachment. We have separation anxiety. Isolation distress is generally just when the dog literally is generally labeled as when the dog literally just cannot handle being alone. You can put another dog in there, you can put another person in there, you can put a whatever, and the dog is fine. But the second that the dog is literally alone, they have panic. Hyperattachment, they're extra on a specific individual. They gravitate towards that individual for a lot of things. Okay. You can have barrier frustration, which is that the dog just doesn't like having something between him and the stimulus that he wants to be near. So usually that we think of that as a person or another dog. He just doesn't like having a baby gate. He just doesn't like having a door. He just doesn't like having some sort of thing in between you. You can have separation anxiety. Now, separation anxiety, some specialists and some certification programs will label separation anxiety as only when a certain person leaves. So they're fine if other people in the household leave, but when this one specific person leaves, that's separation anxiety. For me, I don't really care. Like, I think that separation anxiety is an umbrella term. I use separation anxiety as like an encompassing phrase. It's like reactivity. It's like aggression. I don't look at separation anxiety as a phrase as just like one thing, right? So for the purpose of this episode, that's what I need you to hold into your head. The other thing that I think doesn't necessarily have enough content on or enough discussion around is what I would call confusion. And confusion occurs when a dog has a certain pattern and that pattern has changed. And the dog is not necessarily fearful that their life is about to end. They're not fearful that they're, never going to find water and food and shelter again. But they're like, wait, this isn't what we do. What does this mean? What is happening right now? What's going on? What is the new routine? What? And that question of what is happening can actually instill panic. And that's the thing is like when we think of dogs feeling confused, we think of, well, they'll just solve it out. They'll figure it out. They'll be fine. But actually, if a dog is so accustomed to a routine and then you change that routine on them, that can instill panic in them because they're like, well, what are we operating out of? Well, what does this mean? Well, what do we do? Well, where do we go? Well, what's going to happen? And it's just question after question after question after question after question. Now, there's also boredom. We can't deny that boredom is a separation-related problem. There are absolutely dogs that will demonstrate symptoms of separation anxiety or separation-related distress, but yet it's merely just they have not been fully enriched. And that is why, quite frankly, I always recommend that if you think your dog is experiencing separation anxiety, and it's like the beginning stages, the very first step, in my opinion, is just really examine your enrichment, really examine what you're enriching that dog with, and give your dog a high value thing and see if it helps them. Leave your dog with a Kong full of peanut butter and see if it helps them. And this is probably the solution that you've heard a lot of trainers suggest. It's like, if your dog is experiencing separation anxiety, you know what you got to do. You got to leave them with a high value Kong and let them chew on their peanut butter and then just tire themselves out and then they'll be fine. Everything will be wonderful. That's what you hear a lot. And for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, we start with that. There's no problem with ruling that out. But also that is not how you treat them. Because the thing is like, if you have a dog that is experiencing distress, if anything, them chewing on the Kong is just an outlet for that stress. It's just another way to express stress. It's not healthy necessarily. It's just an option to express stress. But as soon as the Kong is gone, they're just going to go whine at the door anymore and scratch and claw and display the other stress signals. So that is not, in my opinion, a treatment for separation anxiety. That's a treatment for boredom. Now, moving through the rest of this episode, I'm going to go ahead and operate out of the assumption that y'all have tried that. If you're listening to this episode and you're like, my dog demonstrates separation related problems, my dog follows me from room to room, I can't close the bathroom door without my dog crying, I can't go water my plants without my dog yelling and screaming, I've tried the Kong full of peanut butter, it didn't work. I'm going to operate out of the assumption that you have done this and it didn't lead you anywhere. And if that is the case, my friends, you need a separation anxiety treatment protocol. Now, the reason we use desensitization and not counter conditioning, because for the record, leave the dog a Kong full of peanut butter and let them chew on it, and then when you return, take the Kong away, that is a counter conditioning method. Okay. And it's based on the principle that you can make your departure fun and amazing and something that your dog looks forward to. The problem is counter conditioning is incredibly activating. It activates the dog's brain. And the thing is if your dog is experiencing any of the separation related problems, anything of what is underneath that umbrella of separation anxiety that I was talking about, we don't need to be activating them anymore. Your departure, your being gone does not need to be an activating, stimulating event. It should be the opposite. It should be time to calm down. It should be time to be comfortable, to be reserved, to go crawl in a ball and fall asleep. It should be the opposite. So using counter conditioning to treat a separation anxiety protocol doesn't make sense from the get-go, just from the start, because our goal is not to activate. Our goal is to desensitize. Our goal is to get our dog back to homeostasis. Yes? So that is why we use a desensitization protocol. And desensitization is merely the process of increasingly and methodically exposing your dog to being left alone in the context that is required for your goal. And this leads me to my next principle, my friends. What I see is people walking out their door, opening it and closing it and walking right back in, or opening up the door and standing outside in their pajamas for 15 minutes, playing on Instagram, and then walking back in. What I see are people that are aimlessly leaving their dog alone. They might even write it out in a plan. They might sit down, and for a whole week, they write down what are these departures going to look like. But all of the departures are based on how long am I leaving the dog alone. All of the departures have you standing out in your pajamas, in your slippers, with no goodbye cues, just so that you can say you hit the 15-minute mark. It's like, why? Why are we doing this? Why are you standing outside in your pajamas for 45 minutes flipping through Instagram in the snow? That's not helping anyone. Hey Dog Guardian, it's me. I'm jumping in really quickly to remind you that we do have a free separation anxiety FAQ guide. It is 100% free. It's going to answer a lot of the common questions that we get from listeners. So if you're interested in downloading that, you can find the link in the description box of this episode. Make sure you check that out before you jump into the next episode. But for now, let's jump back into the rest of this one and let's get into it. And so what we actually need to be doing is having a very clear method, a very clear objective with what are we trying to accomplish? Because when I talk to guardians and I hear, why do you need to treat your dog's separation anxiety? Why do you need to leave your dog alone? They answer with, well, I need to get the mail. I need to be able to go to the restroom and shower by myself. And I can't even shower without my dog having a panic attack. Or I need to be able to go to the grocery store and get food. Or I need to be able to put my dog in the other room when I have guests come over because they're frightened by guests. When I talk to people and ask them, why do you need, they come back with a very clear objective. I need to be able to do this activity. And yet when they're doing their separation anxiety training, it's not correlated to that activity. It's, I'm just going to go stand outside and, this is my favorite. This one I get a lot. People are treating their separation anxiety protocol and they're walking out the front door. But when I ask them, okay, in the long run, where are you going to leave? They're like, well, we never go out the front door. We always go through the garage door because that's where our car is. So we never go out the front door. And I'm like, then what the hell are we working with the front door for? What is that doing for us? We need to be aware of what our end game is and building in the criteria that gets us to that objective. That is why my desensitization protocol is literally called goal-oriented goodbyes, because it starts from the premise that we have a goal that we're trying to achieve, not let's just see how long we can leave our dog alone today. The other thing we need to be mindful of is how many things are we giving our dog when we leave simply for distraction. Here's the thing. In my experience, we talked about a second ago about how if you give your dog a Kong full of peanut butter and your dog has separation anxiety, that's really not helping because it's activating, right? It's not desensitizing. So what I like to do in the latter end of the journey, I'm talking, you are already like 15-minute walks around the block with nearly all of your goodbye cues. Your dog has been on this journey for several months, if not a year, You are well into the journey. At that point, then I like to bring in a toy at that point. And here's why. This idea is based on the principle that you might have heard of Playway, right? If you guys have listened to Dr. Amy Cook's Playway, the reason she has those dogs play is because you're getting their most authentic selves, right? When they play, they are as raw as they come. That is their most authentic happiness. The same is true. That same principle is what I implement in the latter end of separation anxiety training. In the latter end, I'm going to give a dog an opportunity to play, and I'm going to see what their choice is. Now, here's the thing. If a dog really just wants to go and lay and that's their new routine and they just go and chill and they're perfectly fine, they choose not to chew the toy, that's cool. Like, that doesn't inherently mean anything's wrong. That can be still a very successful goodbye. And if I give a dog a piece of a toy or a Kong or whatever, and they get all excited for it and they chew, and they're like, oh, that was fun. And then they regulate themselves and they go, yeah, mom's still gone. I mean, I had this cool little fun little toy, but then they regulate themselves and they like to go lay down. That is really cool too, because that is their most authentic decision-making in play, right? We're really seeing them think at that point. Think about, what does this context call for? Mom's gone. I'm home alone. In reality, I really should not be running around destroying things. In reality, I probably shouldn't be chewing on a bunch of stuff. So instead, I'm just going to go crawl on this bed and lay here. Decision making. And when we see a dog making decisions, we are seeing them in that logic part of the brain. We are seeing them not engage in their panic behavior, but in their thinking behavior. And that is beautiful. But again, that is a test that you do well in the future. This is not a test you do tomorrow, my friends. And that is how we use distractors in separation anxiety training. Now, here's the truth. Because some of you watching this, you're like, well, I can leave my dog alone. I can go to work and my dog is fine. What I can't do is, if I'm home, I can't take a shower by myself. They're going to follow me. Or what I can't do is I can't leave my home at a different time than is normal, right? I have to make sure that I'm leaving at a certain routine. So even if you have a dog that's not facing like the clinical separation anxiety that might be diagnosed, but your dog is facing one of those other separation related problems. Your dog is demonstrating isolation distress. Your dog is demonstrating barrier frustration. Your dog is demonstrating confusion when a routine changes and they don't know how to cope with that. If your dog is demonstrating some of these other separation related problems, the reality is, guys, the desensitization protocol is the same. Literally what you're doing is the same. You're still setting up a training plan, aware of all the criteria, thinking about what goodbye cues you need to incorporate, thinking about the duration that you need to be away, designing exactly at the time of day and what's all of the awareness, and leaving your dog alone. Like, that actually is all of the same. What is different is your experience as a guardian. Because if you are a guardian of a dog who has several different separation related problems, and in many cases just can't be alone anywhere, like can't be left alone in the other room, can't handle mom running out to get something out of her car, definitely can't handle you actually leaving, can't handle being in the backyard by herself. If you have a dog that's facing many of these different separation related problems, your experience is just inherently more stressful. We just need to call it what it is. You have a harder, more emotionally taxing experience than the guardian who is actually still able to leave their home. They just have problems within the house of the dog follows them from room to room. But that doesn't mean that what you guys are doing is that very different. And it also means that if your dog has several different separation related problems and can't handle being alone in a lot of different contexts, it also means you have more to work through. And so therefore, probably your journey is going to be longer, probably. I mean, duration of journey is very relative on a lot of factors, but I think if we were to look at 100 different cases, I think we would see that primarily the dogs that have separation related problems in a lot of different contexts are more likely to have longer journeys than the others. Here's what is true for both of you. You must be training with intention. If you are listening to this episode and you're like, I have been on the separation anxiety training recovery path for several months, 3, 4, 5, 12, 24 months, and it is still a disaster. I challenge you to ask yourself, what have been your actual goals? Do you know how to start off with a big goal and break it down into smaller goals and 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 smaller goals? Because that is what we actually should be doing with separation anxiety training. Separation anxiety training is not about walking out your front door and standing there for 15 minutes just so that you can say you hit 15 minutes. That is BS, in my opinion. Separation anxiety training is about instead having a very clear focus. I need to be able to get in the car, put the car in reverse, close the garage door, drive down to the grocery store, pick up something, come back, open the garage door, drive into the garage, close the garage door, walk into the house, put down my dog. That is a goal. And what I see are people are just focusing on the duration and the duration and the duration and the duration. And then when I ask them, what are they focusing on? They're like, the duration. And I'm like, okay, but what are you focusing on? They're like, I just want to see how long I can leave my dog alone. What is that serving? Because here's the reality. Let's play this out for a second, right? Let's play this out. You are able to get to your 20-minute mark. You have no goodbye cues. You have not worried about putting in the garage door. Instead, you've just been walking out the front door instead, even though you hardly use the front door. You've been walking out the front door. You are in your slippers. You haven't put your actual tennis shoes on. You are not walking the door. You're not grabbing your keys. You're not grabbing your purse. You don't even have your jacket on. You're out there freezing, but it's okay because you don't have any goodbye cues. So you've played this out and you've hit your 15-minute mark. What are you going to do with that? In reality, what are you planning to do with your life with those 15 minutes? Other than the only solution you have with that is to go all the way back to square one, all the way back to like 5, 10, 15 seconds and start building in goodbye cues. And so what ends up happening, guys, is your journey looks like this. You build, well, all your goodbye cues are here. You build that duration and then you come right back and you have to build again. Whereas with goal-oriented goodbyes, with what I have my clients do, it looks like this. We build duration, we build goodbyes. 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 And we build on top of it so that it's growing into an actual accomplished goal. So that when you get to this point, you're like, oh my God, I can water my plants. Oh my God, I can get the mail. Oh my God, I can take my daughter on a walk around the block. You've actually accomplished something. It's not just like, I hit 25 minutes. That, in my opinion, is what training through a desensitization protocol looks like. And that is the method that we teach in our clients in the RRP as well. Now, I want to talk a second about confused dogs, because I mentioned them a little bit, but I kind of want to circle back to them, because here's what I see with our confused dogs. I mentioned that these dogs tend to have problems, and we get a lot of dogs that have anxiety that experience what I would consider a confusion when it comes to separation-related problems. They can handle probably you leaving at a certain time, at a certain pattern, at a certain consistency. Like if it's part of the routine, they're like, whatever, see you when I see you. They can handle you moving through a cycle that they follow and they can predict, and they feel like they have some handle on. But if you deviate from that routine, then panic ensues. It's like, wait a minute, why are you brushing your teeth right now? You're not supposed to brush your teeth right now. I need to come in here because I need to watch you because you're doing something important. Why are you showering? You're not supposed to shower right now. This is not when you shower. Why did you close the door? What are you doing? Excuse you. Why are you leaving right now? This is not what we do. We sit on the couch at this time. Why are you leaving? These dogs become anxious by means of them feeling like they're missing a piece of the puzzle. In my experience, again, purely anecdotal here, purely anecdotal from my perspective. In my experience, the dogs that are most prone to this, what I would consider confusion-based panic, are our herding breeds, are our working breeds, are very intense breeds. They like structure. They like things in line. They want people to be doing the same thing. They're like, I noticed that you changed your pattern here. What does this mean? It's not easy for them to handle change, right? And they notice when change occurs and they question it. They suddenly become suspenseful. They have like a million and one questions that hit their head. And the thing about these dogs, because they fascinate me, the thing about these dogs is that their questions are quite logical. They are going through that adrenaline. So there's definitely a piece of that fight, flight, or freeze, which we can like simplify and call emotion. We can call that panic. We can call that whatever, right? We can call it that. But interestingly enough, these dogs are actually very logical. And when they're asking these questions and they're noticing these pattern changes, they're really thinking about it. Like they're really trying to figure out, like, what does this mean? What is happening? So what I find with these dogs is it's actually best to make it a sort of a game that we tell them that a routine is about to change. We need to tell them when change is about to occur. We give them warning. And what I mean by this is like, you know that TikTok, if you guys are on TikTok, there was like a TikTok sound that was going on that was like, yeah, I can go with the flow, but like, what time does the flow start? And like, I can be spontaneous, but like, what day are we supposed to be spontaneous exactly? Right? And like, they want to like plan for their change, for the spontaneity, for the lack of control. We want to have control over when we won't have control. So what I find with these dogs is that if we can give them a warning that, okay, things are about to look really different. Something's about to change here. We're about to play a game where you're going to notice that things are different, but you're still going to like it. They go, oh, okay, got it. Thank you for this information. And then they're all on board, right? Because we're activating that logic part of their brain. We're playing into their questions, as opposed to just letting them sit with those questions and not know how to answer them and just feel empty. We have to let them know ahead of time, you're going to feel this way, but it's okay because you're going to like it. You're going to reap rewards as a result of it. And the thing is if you're creating a new routine, it's way easier, right? If you're like, let's say, you were working from home rather, but now you're going back to the office, or you weren't going to have to leave your dog on Sundays, but now every day on Sunday, you're going to have to leave your dog alone. If you're creating a new routine, it's way easier, quite frankly, because the dog will click it. It'll be like, made a new pattern. I'm down with the patterns. We like our patterns. We like things in order. I'm down with it. That's cool. But if you're going to do something that is continuously going to be spontaneous, that isn't going to have structure, isn't going to feel continuous, then I recommend we make it a game that we tell the dog you're playing. Give them that piece of information, or else they're going to sit there and ask questions. And they're going to cause themselves to be stressed and anxious as a result of it. Remember that anxiety is around two different things. When we use the phrase anxiety, we're talking about two different things. One, the dog sees where something is headed and they don't like it. They say, I know where this cycle, this routine is going, and it causes me stress. It causes my body stress. Or two, I don't see where this is going, and I feel like I have no information on what's about to happen to me. So it's one of those two things. They either know where it's going and they know that the trauma is coming, or they're like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. What does this mean? We have to be aware of what their experience is so that we can lean into it and we can treat them and we can give them that answer. In all honesty, guys, my favorite dogs are the breeds that get labeled fun police. I like them because I too enjoy structure. I too enjoy everybody to follow rules. I too enjoy patterns. I love a good pattern. It makes me very happy. So I relate to them. They're a little neurotic, but they're not bad, right? We just have to know how to communicate with them. We just have to know how to fill those needs and give them environments that are conducive to those needs. Yes. So that is my spiel on separation anxiety, separation related problem treatment. Of course, I have visual tutorials on my YouTube channel. My popular one has 17,000 views on it or something. It's a really good 20-minute tutorial. Definitely recommend you check that one out. I loved having this discussion really in depth and having this as a podcast episode so that we can expand on it. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, it would help us tremendously if you would leave a review sharing what nuggets of gold were most valuable to you and why you think other dog guardians should listen to this podcast too. And don't be a stranger. Contact me and Team Dog Liaison on Instagram, Facebook, and email. Links to all of our socials are in the description box of this episode. We are wishing you well, and we are hoping that you jump into our very next episode. We'll see you soon.